So
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Courageous Leadership with Virginia Prodan. I am Virginia Prodan. I am your host. I'm an international human rights attorney, a speaker, a writer. My memoir, Saving My Assassin, was published by Tyndale House Publisher. You can find it at virginiaprodanbooks.com. My podcast is Courageous Leadership with Virginia Prodan, and I love to invite courageous leaders to participate and share with us what leadership and what we can learn from them. And today we have a very special leader with us. So make sure everything is quiet around you. Take notes, take everything, because it's going to be more than amazing. I promise you. Our guest is Dr. Josh McConkey. He is a United States Air Force Reserve officer, a decorated commander, an emergency physician, and a North Carolina lieutenant governor candidate. Welcome here, and thank you so very much for your presence here. We are here to hear from you how you started, what leadership means for you, and especially what courageous leadership means for you. So tell us.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction. It's a privilege to be on the show. Yeah, as a military commander, I've served over 23 years now, and I've had some great examples of great leadership. I've had some great examples of very poor leadership and lots in between. So I just try to carry those experiences forward and just pay it forward to the men and women that I serve. I had 100 men and women under my command at Andrews Air Force Base with an aeromedical staging squadron. I just ended my command tour and now do emergency management. But yeah, just those basic tools of leadership. I don't micromanage, so I let people do their job. And that onus falls upon me as the military commander. I make those decisions. So if I'm having to micromanage someone, if they're not really getting the job done, I own that. That's my fault. That's my problem. I made a bad decision, and we correct course, and maybe I need to do some more mentoring, or maybe I find someone else to do the job. But those types of things, that's the start.
Oh, that's great. So tell us, you are a leader, you are a physician, and you also wrote a book. Tell us about a little bit about your book.
Yeah, thank you. So, be the weight behind the spear. It's my personal leadership ethos. And the whole purpose of writing that book was, as an emergency physician and a military commander, I just saw some of the shortcomings and some bad policy decisions that were made that unfortunately have come home to roost. So you have an entire generation of Americans that you shut out of school, that you shut out of churches, and just shut out from their communities during very critical stages in their life. So as a result, I see the anxiety, the depression, and unfortunately suicides in my ER. And as a military commander, that same group of individuals just lacks resiliency skills, basic abilities to communicate, and just lacks some of these leadership qualities that we need to get. Teach them these, and we have to take ownership of that. It doesn't do any good to blame. There's no blame game. It's here's the problem. What can we do to fix it? And that book is my prescription to fix that problem. And being the weight behind the spear is just taking the best resource that we have in our country, teachers, coaches, volunteers, families, and mentors. And I want them to get involved in their community and help this generation, help teach them those leadership skills face to face, no Facebook and TikTok videos and YouTube shorts, like real face to face interaction. And so that book is my prescription to address that issue.
Do you think that this generation lacks face to face interaction, and they isolate themselves, and because of that, they become uh, maybe depressed, thinking that they don't count as much as we think that they do?
So that has a very large part to play with that. When you take in a generation who already lived on iPads and telephones, they've never known a world without social media and that digital world. So for them, like their perception is reality. And so then the only physical interactions that they did have, like at school or church or their communities, that whole COVID stretch where you just shut them out of everything and kept them at home on the iPad was not good for their development. And so just the basics, I mean, uh, looking you in the eyes when they're speaking to you. I see routinely all the time, like these younger Americans, they'll sit right next to each other and text each other. Like right next. I mean, you're right next to the person, and you'll be texting back and forth. It's interesting. I was raised, fortunately, in uh, late '70s, early '80s, early '90s, and really enjoyed interactions with people and human beings. It's I know it's a digital world now, but social media hasn't been good for their emotional or psychiatric development as well. And so we see a lot of those issues in my emergency department right now.
I love your perspective as a physician because I have a perspective as a lawyer, as a speaker, and as a mother. I believe, for example, that people lack the knowledge that their values, they have value in God's sight. That He created them. He created them
Yeah.
with the value, skills, and talents, and everything. But when you forget and you are trying to see how many likes you have, and you try to win the cultures, and especially the ungodly culture approval, you go to a different perspective. I would love to hear, and I know our audience, would love to hear what steps do you have in helping people to go from depression, to go from um, lack of values and lack of communication, to telling them you have value, follow those steps.
So those very simple things, letting them know that they do matter. Like what you do every single day makes a difference. People don't realize that. The people that you interact with, your friends, your colleagues, coworkers, everybody around you, you do matter. And those decisions that you make impact all those people around you as well. So when you realize that, you can empower yourself. So just letting them know that they matter, number one. And then two, empowering them to get involved. So for this younger generation, you really need to get them buy in into your organization very quickly. The attention spans just aren't there. So they quit at a moment's notice. And so you've got to get them like integrated and get buy-in and ownership of your organization as quickly as possible. Team building exercises, sitting down, like just fluffing them up a little bit, just making sure you ask lots of questions to get engagement, but you ask them questions that they're going to have the answers to. And then just the more you can roll them up into the fold and develop those relationships with their colleagues and the people around them. Hey, what you have to say matters. And I do have a real open door. I know a lot of leadership and commanders, they say they like to listen, but they don't, right? I mean, it goes one ear out the other. Just letting people know, hey, you can sit down and chat with me. I might have some difference in opinion there. And certainly in the military, we have a very tight hierarchical structure, with a rank. I mean, me being a full bird colonel in the U.S. Air Force. But behind closed doors, I mean, they can come in and chat with me about anything. I want to hear their ideas. If I don't have a good rationale for why I'm making decisions, then maybe I'm not making a great decision. Not that everyone has to agree with it, but just being able to communicate those basic skills. And, when you teach them about leadership, and ownership that we talked about a little bit, accountability. Accountability is really important. If you don't have accountability, you have nothing. And so that's some of the things that our military has been addressing over the last several months that a lot of people have probably read and seen on TV with our Secretary of War and the President. But these are really important things that we're just getting back to basics.
I love what you said, that everything that you do today, it's important. Many times when I train people, I am telling them that their legacy and my legacy starts today with what I do today, not tomorrow, not any other day, not by someone else, but by me. I build my legacy today, and each one of us, we build the legacy today. You also pointed out to something that is very important, because this generation in many ways is isolated, also because they were brainwashed in college and university that your parents are stupid, they don't know what they're doing, you are important and you are so and so and whatever. They want to reject their parents, and they want to find a purpose, but they don't have one. They don't, they jump from one purpose to another. I will say to that, not in a sense to judge people, but to make them aware, because, like you said, in order to correct something, you have to be aware what is wrong. But
Yeah.
many parents, um, and I didn't make this mistake because I was not rich. When I came to America, I came empty handed. I didn't have money, so I couldn't resolve my kids' problems by giving them money. Just put my nails down and with them, and I pray and I say, let's ask the Lord to help us. And by doing this, I trained them to depend on God. But many American people, not even knowing, because they love their children, they want to provide for them, and they put themselves, when their kids were in school, in at their home, between God and them. And they go to college, and now they have the teachers, and they accept what the teacher said. So don't make that mistake if you are still having kids at home.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I've got 3, and that's, such an important thing to raise there, just that faith. Like, I would not have survived my combat deployment in Iraq without a strong faith, and a lot of the things that you'll see people struggle with now is just some very basic principles in biology and just some very simple things, is when you uncouple yourself from faith, and if you really believe that you are the end all being, all knowing, godlike figure, that there's nothing else above you, you're not beholden to anyone else, that's where you get some of these really bizarre stances and some of these social issues that we're really struggling with right now as a society. And just having that faith, that just general building block that you are something special, like you are going to make mistakes, but you are beholden to someone, right? It's not, you aren't just the end of everything. So I think that's a really important point that you raised.
Yeah, and in the same time, even though I have been walking with the Lord in arrest, persecution, a man who put the gun in my face and said that he's going to kill me because he was sent by the government, I have a very deep relationship with Christ. And still, every single day, when I make my to do list, I remind myself that Christ said, apart from me, you can do nothing. So
Yeah.
if I want to do my to-do list on my own, I will accomplish nothing. So I always pray. So we all are humans. So we all have to be reminded that Christ is the one that will perform miracles in us. You also outlined something that is very important in this society, and it's entitlement. How do you train, you encourage in your book these people, or daily, uh, to be aware of the entitlement issue and how they can correct that?
So, just having that discussion with them, that, and I have this with my children all the time. The world owes you nothing, absolutely nothing. You have to go out there and earn it. So, if for anybody that's a college football fan, Nick Saban was a longtime coach at Alabama, legendary coach. There's a good reel, there's a video of him just giving basically like a lecture to the media, and he just talks about waking up every morning. You're entitled to nothing, absolutely nothing. And if you don't put in that time and that effort, you may have skills. You may have been blessed with wonderful skills, but if you don't put in the effort behind that and earn everything, you get nothing. You're never going to achieve greatness. And so I tell my kids, like, the world owes you nothing. I figured out very quickly in Iraq. So, my combat tour there, the first 2 weeks was a huge change for me because I landed in 2007. It was part of the surge for President Bush in 2007. And they brought in, 10, 20,000 additional troops. And I landed on a combat theater. 2 weeks before I got there, they shot down a helicopter with a flight surge, which is what I was doing. And they shot down 8 helicopters in that 2 week span. So the day I get there, they shot down one of my squadron's helicopters, one of my unit's helicopters. And I was like, whoa, like, this is everything you thought you knew about life. Like, it just gets distilled down very quickly. Do you want to live or do you want to die? And at the end of the day, nobody cares how much money you make or where you went to school or how big your house is or what kind of car you drive. That doesn't matter. Like, you're here to take care of the men and women that are taking bullets for this country and they're shooting down helicopters left and right. It just changed the whole mindset. It's like you're owed nothing, and you can still do all the right things and end up with nothing. Like life is not fair. But once you realize that, you take ownership of that. You're not a victim. I owned a business in Texas where an individual was just the CEO had a majority share ownership, about 55% ownership, and just did some really bad things and was embezzling money and was violating Medicare laws. And I had called him out on it because I had applied for a national security position on the National Security Council, and it was a top secret clearance. And he just proceeded to go nuts. He offered me a bribe for $3.4 million. I told him to shove it up his rear end. Like, you can't buy me. I'm a colonel in the United States Air Force. And then he proceeded to bankrupt the company. And it happened right as COVID hit. So we'd filed a lawsuit, like an injunction, to prevent him from bankrupting the company, just to punish us. And COVID hit. We couldn't get a court date. I ended up, at the end of the day, I lost about $5 million. He came pretty close to bankrupting me. I had to move to Australia for a year because he made threats against the family as well. The FBI got involved. They're like, well, he hasn't like done anything yet. It's just like verbal threats. I'm like, oh, come on now. So everyone was just consumed with COVID. But, you just take care of yourself, you take care of your family, you're owed nothing. And at the end of the day, we had moved to Australia. When we came back to the US, we moved back to North Carolina where we're at now, which we're much happier and always loved North Carolina anyways. But 4 years after that, I won the North Carolina educational lottery. So, so it's about karma pays forward. Just continue to do the right thing. You can't control other people. I learned that the hard way because he was crazy, but you can only control what you do, and you just continue to do the right thing. And sometimes it doesn't work out. You could do all the right things, you still lose $5 million. But at the end of the day, I ended up winning the lottery, so it all evens out in the end.
Yeah, it is. It is so important. You also mentioned something that as you follow Christ, as you obey Christ, you will accomplish greatness. Many times, I say to people, whatever dream you have for your life, it's nothing compared with the dream that God has for your
Yeah,
life. And as you read in my book, I was nobody's child in my family, and I was always thought that if somebody comes in town, I will be offered, for adoption and everything. But God made me his child, and he will never
yeah,
desert me. He will be with me forever. And when I accepted him in Romania under communist and under pressure, where it was God, it was dead and life. You're a Christian, a special lawyer, you will lose your job and everything. I never imagined that God will use me to change Romania from a communist country to a democratic country, to be able to come to United States of America and to be able to meet Ronald Reagan, who God used to make it possible for me to leave Romania and come to America and to speak in many places now, even before or after Donald Trump. And I'm thinking, I was the nobody's child, but that's the way God uses. And you said it in many ways that God is a God of miracles. But you mentioned, and I'm just curious, you said that you arrived in war zone. The helicopters were just not able, to go anywhere and everything. And everything changed. Can you develop on that one? How exactly God trained you? How exactly God motivated you to be the leader that you were, not for yourself, but for your troops?
so when you go through that transition, it's to get into a battle mindset. I mean, it is relatively easy because most people have a survival instinct. Like, I do want to live. It was the coming home that was much more difficult. But when you make that transition, I had two really good individuals in my life. My first one was my cousin. He was a special forces operator, Zachary. And I got a chance to talk with him. He was still back in the US, and just explained what was going on. He's like, "Hey, man, you're in it now, and you can do all the right things, but still be wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, you can die crying and whining about it, or you might as well just get jacked up, enjoy the best adrenaline rush of your life. And if you die, you're in a medevac helicopter, like saving lives, man. There's no better way to go." I was like, oh my goodness, I guess. And then my chaplain, Jim Higgins, that just being able to lean on that faith. I mean, there's no way I could have absorbed that or got through that without a very strong faith. And you realize that, God is going to put you where he needs you, and he's not going to put you in a situation that you can't handle. If he decides to call you to a better place, then that's it, man. There's nothing you can do about it. And just training your mind to just take extreme pride in what you're doing. You're flying medevac, you're saving lives. I mean, just doing amazing things. And what that allows you to do is you're serving for other people. You're not serving for yourself. You know, it's about the people around you. It's about the men and women that you're taking care of and leading. And the biggest portion of that was, flying those missions because, my combat medics and the crews were flying. And, how could I ask them to do that unless I was willing to do that myself? And, just I had other colleagues reaching out like, "Hey, listen, why are you flying medevac missions? That's crazy, man. You're going to get killed." I'm like, "Hey, listen, this is my team. I lead from the front, and I've always been a military historian, a big military history buff, and just the leaders that I looked up throughout history. That's just that's who I am, and those stories, and I've been able to carry forward for 23 years of service. And as a military commander, they knew I'd been there and done that. So when I had people spun up and ready to deploy to the Middle East in September of 2023, I had trained them extremely well. That rabbit hole gets pretty deep, so take advantage of every opportunity. The world can change at a moment's notice. Within a week of them landing in the Middle East, October 7th kicked off the Hamas Israeli conflict. And it was my people there responding to that. And I was very proud of what they were doing. And, just they won amazing awards and had all these accolades when they returned. And that's the thing I'm most proud of, in that leadership, all those past experiences, I was able to, pay that forward to them. And they were incredibly successful. And boy, the whole world was on pins and needles.
You mentioned that it was harder when you returned to United States of America. Why?
So just the time to decompress, when you're in a combat situation and you see men and women dying for this country, and the stories that I'll tell people. So I'm an emergency doctor. So you take care of men and women in combat. And so there were some individuals that took an IED, both of their legs are blown off. I mean, they're near death, and they're still awake and talking to you, and you're going through a trauma resuscitation, blood transfusions, all of this. It's like, "Hey, how's your pain?" And so they had usually two questions: is one, is my genitalia still there? Because for a guy, that's an important deal, and that's some of the things that happen. And then they ask about their buddy, and their pain was like four or five out of 10 with their legs blown off. And then you come back to the emergency department in the United States, like about 2 weeks after my combat tour is over. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm running a pediatric code, and the baby dies. I walk out of the room, and there's a mother with her 14-year-old son that just starts yelling and screaming at us. And I'm like, "Listen, this baby just died. I need some time." And she said, "I don't care. We were here first." And her son had an ingrown toenail, and his pain is 15 out of 10. I'm like, "Listen, 1 out of 10 is it's irritating. 10 out of 10 is your legs are blown off and you watched your buddy die." He's like, "Oh, yeah, it's definitely a 15." I'm like, "Oh, I cannot do this." So, I mean, just that transition, just trying to assimilate back into just a civilian life, or for people who haven't experienced those things, it's all relative, right? Their perception is reality. And man, that was a hard transition. It took me really a couple of years, but obviously in a great place now. My wife is a big part of that. Elsa, just an amazing individual, and wife and three kids, and we're doing all right.
Um, in few seconds, can you tell us how your military and your experience at war helps you to be the best father that you can be?
Boy, I think it helps me put things into perspective for my kids. I hope they never have to see the things that I've seen, but to just appreciate what we have in America. This is the most amazing country in the world. The things that the rest of the world, like 90% of the world, has to wake up and worry about every day, you don't hear. They don't wake up every day just, is there going to be some genocidal maniac going to come in and murder everybody who identifies as a Christian, like that's happening in like the South Sudan and in some of the areas of Africa right now. The Middle East, where they would just anybody helping the government or helping U.S. forces, they would just every couple of months just go in there and massacre everybody in their family just to prove a point, or just rape and throw acid on women just because. I mean, the rest of the world deals with some horrific things that just we don't worry about here. And you try to find a way to impart that knowledge on your kids. Just they feel you're not trying to scare them, but like, listen, America's a special place. Uh, if you don't have the latest iPhone, you're gonna live. Okay. So just those things, trying to find that healthy balance of perspective. Try to do it. I'm certainly not perfect, but you know, it's always a challenge.
Before I let you go, would you please let our audience know where they can find you
Please,
and your
thank you
book?
very much. So, the Weight Behind the Spear, I've got a foundation as well, a nonprofit organizations. But if you go to weightbehindthespear.com, WEIGHT, weightbehindthespear.com, and the foundation is /foundation with a capital F. And my campaign, for North Carolina here, if you go to strongerNC.com, I'd love to have you on my team and learn more about what I bring to the table with leadership from North Carolina.
Thank you, Josh, for your participation. I hope everybody is amazed by how much you have learned, and make sure you go to Josh's website and support him, support the organization, and support him to be the next lieutenant governor and in his state. And I hope you go to virginiaprodanbooks.com/contact and tell us your questions, your comments, and you also go there and you can find the book, and we will be more than happy to hear from you and to hear how everything that Josh shared with you impacted you in your life and your leadership. Until next time, thank you so very much, Josh, again for your
Thank you.
participation, and thank you everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.